Hey everybody, at that time PD continues not only on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but also on a Sunday night. Josh Tovar, proud principal of Memorial Pathway Academy, here for Unlock the Middle, here to make sure that we all grow together. In these turbulent times right now, we all need to become one big national PLN, learning from each other because you know what? We're all facing the same adversity. It doesn't matter you're California, Alaska, Hawaii, Rona is Rona, and it affected us all the same way. I'm sorry, it is what it is. Red, blue, purple, whatever you want to call it, we're all educators and we're all preparing the future of this nation, making sure that we grow together as one. Because a kid is a kid, and that kid will be the future leader of this country, whether it be a president, a senator, an engineer, a carpenter, a plumber, whatever it is. But we all need to make sure that we work together as one, because that kid right now, due to the economics and everything that's going on, might go from Texas to Ohio, from Ohio back to Brownsville, back to New Jersey, wherever it might be. So we all need to be united on best practices, making sure that we're engaged, loving our kids because they're the future of this country. And so without further ado, I hand it over right now to Dean. Welcome, our guests.
Hey, Josh, I couldn't have done that any better myself. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, to the roundtable. Again, we're here to celebrate, promote, and just network the heck out of what we do. Josh, we talk about kids, the common denominator across the board. We're all in this business because of kids. Again, my name is Dean Packard. I'm the principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts. For all you guys out there, if you can, just let us know where you're from, where you're at, and chime into the conversation when you get an opportunity to do so. Let me kick it down to Dr. Drew Tomlin.
Hey, I had to unmute myself. This is Drew Tomlin, principal of Heritage Middle School in Westerville, Ohio, right on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, and of course, Atlanta Braves fan. Go Braves. Anyways, just happy to be a part of the conversation, ready to unlock that middle together. Here you go.
Love it. Kick it over to Ashley.
Hi, Ashley Hubner with Access Coaching and Consulting. I'm excited to be here tonight and see how we can learn and grow together.
Awesome. Fonz, kick it up to you, our technology specialist.
There you go. Excellent. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again. Just a pleasure to be here as well with a fellow podcaster. Shout out to the podcast family. So I am Fonz Mendoza. I am the host of My EdTech Live. Aside from that, my day job, I am an instructional software specialist for a school district in south of Texas, still south of San Antonio. That's right. There is still Texas south of San Antonio, just in case people didn't know. And I am glad to be here with all of y'all to connect, learn, and inspire.
Thanks, Fonz. And then that comes now to our main attraction tonight. Dr. Tracey Severns is with us tonight to break it down from soup to nuts. She was a paraprofessional to superintendent to rewired, and back in the business, making it happen for all districts across the state that she lives in right now. Tracey, welcome to our show. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself? And it's great to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It is an honor and a pleasure to be part of this important conversation. I've always believed that the work that we do is the most important work that anyone can do because we make futures happen. We hold lives in our hands, and we have to remember our power and our importance to influence the learning lives of kids because that's what we do. We serve every day. We need to do it with whole hearts and clear heads, and just make sure that each day, my whole mantra, my whole career has been about reaching and teaching kids. We've got to reach them and teach them, and that's our work. So I started my career in education at the Children's Institute. It was a school for children classified severely emotionally disturbed and autistic. It was a tough population. Any of you out there who have worked with difficult kids know that it is a challenge when you do not have a polite audience. And the gift in that is you learn to be good. So that's where I really honed the art of teaching. So kids are with you. I was there as an aide for 2 years, a teacher for 2 years, a master teacher. I got my degree at Montclair in special education. I was a special ed teacher in Millburn, New Jersey. That was a tough place to be as well because parents were paying attention. And what's interesting is many times when I speak to educators, we bemoan the fact that we don't have enough parent involvement, right? We're like, oh, where are these parents? Well, we say that until you get it. And then when you get it, you're like, back off, sister. Why don't you let me be the teacher and you be the mom. What do you say? So I was in Melbourne for 6 years. That's where I wanted to do more for kids and colleagues. I got my doctorate at Seton Hall and my first shot in administration in little tiny Hope Township, 240 kids, K to 8. And, you know, a lot of times we think a small school would be easy. No, because you have to wear every hat, everything from the hiring to the firing to the bus routes was my job. And I loved it. The part that made it difficult was that 2 of those 240 kids were mine. So have any of you ever taught or worked where your children attend? I think Ashley's right. That is tough. And I'll tell you what I learned quickly is that therapy was not included in the health plan. So I had to leave. They needed to be on their own, and so did I. I got a principal job in Morristown. It was there that I really renewed my study of Spanish. So cada día cuando conduciera, escucha y repita discos compactos en mi coche, porque creo que es muy importante que puedo hablar con todos mis estudiantes y los padres. I believe that if we're going to be in this role as leaders, that we need to be able to talk to our kids and their parents. And so I worked at it. This doesn't just happen. I applied for a couple of grants. I studied Spain in Costa Rica. Viví con una familia para 2 semanas y otra vez in Marbella y Madrid in España. So I studied Español y flamenco dance. And it was really hard if you've ever tried to do flamenco. So I like, listen, I just think that when we are in communities, we have to do our very best to be able to communicate with the people who are there. And we can do that. We can set our mind to it and make that happen. So I was in Morristown, threw my hat in the ring to be a superintendent. Never did I think they would pick me. They did. And I found myself in a place where I was successful and unhappy. And if this is a short life, and I think it is, I think we should stay close to our purpose. And my passion was being closer to kids and the teachers and the leaders who are there to serve them. So I went back to being a middle school principal in Mount Olive. I was a principal there and then was recruited pretty much by the State Department. And for 2 years, I was assistant commissioner, chief academic officer, and I traveled this great state of New Jersey, which looks small compared to Texas until you drive it. But there's a lot of people, a lot of traffic. And I was assistant commissioner for 2 years. And then I chose to go back to my former district as director of student performance. I retired, and now I serve schools and districts across this great nation because there are kids and there are causes and there's important work to do everywhere. So that's a little bit of my story. And my passion, my topics are, you know, about how to reach kids so we can teach kids. I believe in the importance of leaders. And I believe in the critical role that data plays in helping us know our truth in our schools so that we really can ensure that we are there for every single kid, even those kids who dare us to teach them every day.
So when were you the Morristown superintendent? Principal Caffelli wants to know.
Oh, let's see. I was there in like 98 to 2004 or so.
Okay. All right. I hope you got your answer there, Principal Caffelli.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, what you didn't say that you did was the head of the custodial department and the head of the cafeteria, because I think you covered, that's an inside the park home run in education as far as I'm concerned. I think you touched all the bases and then some. Yeah. Needless to say, the one thing I'm taking away from this is that your enthusiasm hasn't wavered one bit. And your focus on kids is really what's driving you. So kind of leads us to what we're doing today. And let's talk a little bit about data and what that means to you. So we can kick that around. Our schools are run by data. You know, we've got our grades, progress monitoring, we got attendance, we got state data, all kinds of data. So when you use data, what does that look like through your eyes?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked me that, because so many times when I go places, data gets data has a bad name. It's like, oh, that's a 4-letter word. But I'm going to tell you something. It is the key to knowing why we're getting what we're getting. It's our window into the student experience. So for me, data is information. It is information. It is by no means solely or specifically scores. So I'm going to tell you something. As I travel and across and visit schools and districts lately, here's some of the most important data is the check-in data that we do each morning when we ask the question, how are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? Because if we have kids who are 1s and 2s, then we've got to circle back because they're not going to be available to the learning. The kind of data we need to look at is students' ability to self-regulate. Who forgot how to be a human in a shared space? What teachers are telling me is that, yeah, we expected this COVID learning loss, but what I didn't anticipate is this. Who are these people? I taught for years. I taught 3rd grade. This ain't that. People in high school are telling me, I taught 10th graders. They're like middle school. People are telling me that they're meeting all kinds of challenges. And some of the data that we need to collect is the social learning intentions, is self-regulation, is student skills. I mean, I don't know about you. I've been in classrooms. Kids forgot how to sit in a chair. They forgot when the teacher's talking, you're not. I mean, listen to this. You want to hear a data point? Track the times and places that kids ask to go to the bathroom. I have not met a middle school kid who does not have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. If something awesome is happening in that classroom, they're not asking to go to the bathroom. What I want to know is why are they all asking to leave the class? We need to find out. We need to ask them, tell me about that. And here's what you're going to notice. If you track students' requests to leave the bathroom, to go to the bathroom, it's going to be in very predictable places with very predictable people. So that's data. For me, data is, it's when we do a hotspot map. So here's a hotspot map. In a middle school, you give kids the floor plan and you have them color the places that are hot. And when I say hot, I mean that don't feel safe, where there's bullying. So if we ask ourselves, where are those places likely to be? What comes to mind? If you gave kids a floor plan, where are the places that bullying is likely to be taking place?
Hallways, transitions, buses,
Bathrooms.
Bathrooms.
Locker rooms,
Stairways.
entrances. Yes. And here's the shocker. There are occasions when I have done that data collection strategy in schools and a classroom lights up red.
Ooh.
Well, if you have someone who thinks sarcasm is funny, it doesn't feel safe in that room. And leaders need to know, because we have to have a forthright conversation. And, you know, Susan Scott, I'm a big fan of Susan Scott book, Fierce Conversations. And she says, you get what you tolerate. And you know what I won't tolerate in any school that I'm in is people who are unkind to kids. I won't have it. I won't have it. We are going to have a fierce conversation, and that is going to change. Because learning isn't going to happen in that room. So for me, data is all about getting real, getting close to kids, listening to the staff. Yes, it's about absenteeism. But if you look at Russ Qualia's work, it's about the answer to this question. Okay, you ready? Teachers care if I'm absent. That's one of the questions from Russ Qualia's school voice research. Teachers care if I'm absent. So I want everyone out there to imagine what percentage of your students would answer in the affirmative. In Russ Qualia's research, he asked kids from grades 3 to 12, 60,142 students. And guess what the answer was? Listos? 46% of students said teachers care if I'm absent. So when I go to schools and they tell me we have a chronic absenteeism problem, your problem may not center on finding consequences to get kids to come, but to fostering connections so the kids feel that it matters to somebody that they're there. The data is the answer to finding out what it feels like to be a student, a staff member, a bus driver, a para. Yes, it's about our outcomes, our achievement outcomes, of course, but it's also about what it feels like to be in our schools.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because on a lot of our shows, one of the common denominators will be everything sparks with a relationship. And if you don't have a relationship with the people that you're in front of, your consumers, your constituents, guess what happens? Everything hits pause, and we have zero momentum and traction. And definitely something that is just so super huge. Let's kick this around a little bit in data, what it looks like. Let's start off with Drew. You know, when you're looking at data through the lens, being the principal in your building,
Yeah.
I mean, what are you digging into?
Well, first of all, I mean, gosh, Tracy, I got to tell you what, I mean, there's no off on the genius machine when you're talking. Goodness gracious. Thank you so much for,
I mean,
okay? Gosh, FOMO. Kicking it off. I mean, for me, I know that a lot of us, our focus is on the quantitative data, that numerical data, but I could say first and foremost for a principal in the building, and I think anyone working in a schoolhouse, is that qualitative data that you capture just being out and about. Like, we get ahead of so many different issues by capturing body language on a kid, even like, you know, gosh, this girl's hair isn't what it normally is. Like, what's going on? Let's go ahead and get ahead of that. So I think that's important for us to remember too. And then, you know, we were talking about teacher attendance, and I think the word attendance has both quantitative and qualitative properties to it that we need to remember, that we can look at our numbers of people who aren't in attendance, or maybe those that are in attendance. But what about the emotional attendance? Their bodies might physically be in the room, but are they emotionally attending? And that's where I feel like this year in particular, I'm seeing a lot of, you know, just from the attrition of the school year, that is happening. And then I have one more little thing, and I want to say about like data and how we look at it. I think like we have to be careful not to look at data just through maybe a subtractive lens. Like I'm concerned about the teachers who aren't in my building, but how do I and how should I combat that subtractive mentality and look at and celebrate the teachers who are in my building and the students who are doing the right thing? You know what I'm saying? So like, I think not to like make sure everything is rainbows and unicorns and rosy colored glasses, but just to combat that narrative to make it a positive. So that's a thing that's always in my brain.
That's good stuff. Ashley, how about from your lens?
I think the best data is the data that's close to the classroom. And I do like that you were talking about, you know, the relationships with the students and the learning environment, because on the data walk sheet that I use when I go in and out of classrooms, like the first area that I look for is the classroom learning environment. And I have 4 priorities that I have: students feel safe, opportunity to learn, high expectations, and students are celebrated. And if those areas aren't marked, there's not going to be any learning that happens. And so when I use that data walk form, it gives me a good sense of what's going on in the classroom, because the learning environment has to be there for the best practices to happen and then for the curriculum to be taught. And so I think that is very important. And I'm glad that you shared that about, you know, looking at that aspect of what's going on in the classroom rather than just looking at those test scores that are happening, because they're not going to happen and they're not going to be high if there's not a fun, engaging learning environment going on where the students feel safe and heard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said that, because you know what, we can do a pacing guy that goes 1,000,000 miles an hour, and guess what, we're going to lose people along that on that travel, only because of the fact that going too fast and not having that connection, not having that relational piece. Forget it, doesn't really matter, especially when I start thinking about math. But whole nother subtopic here. Fonz, from your instructional technology specialist lens.
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, like I did make a comment here. A lot of districts that I know just look at the data just because they want to know where they're at as far as test scores. You know, I do get to work with content specialists, and it really truly is about building relationships. And I think even like you just hit it, Dean, we have, you know, our curriculum, we have everything laid out for teachers and offering those things that so teachers don't have to feel overwhelmed in creating things. We already have things there for them, but it's the most important thing is what we're seeing. Like, you know, we're trying to support them in helping them. We know that they feel overwhelmed. So my case, it's how can I help you be more efficient and more effective with your workflow through the use of either technology platforms that we have, integrating that with the students as well. But, for me, I also want to look through that lens of the relationship lens. How are the teachers feeling? Because myself being a teacher, I know what that is like. And being in the classroom, I'm continually advocating for teachers to make sure that administrators also know that, like you mentioned earlier, it's like you're not going to see those scores if the environment isn't correct, if the environment isn't conducive, and if the teacher is not there, or that absenteeism, even though they may be there physically, but are not engaging the students. I mean, overall, you're not going to have the results that you're looking for. That is something that I continually have my lens on, and I bring out and stress. But in my lens, guys, there's only so much I can do. Oftentimes, I'm just seen as a computer guy. And unfortunately, I try and do my best that I can to help teachers. And obviously, in the end, it's the students to make sure that they're engaged. So they're there and they're not just there treated as a number, but actually, treated as a person. And they get to build up those skills and build up that confidence so they can continue moving forward.
Part of the journey, my friend. Good stuff. Josh.
I have all these voices in my head like normal. And I hear Coach Hurt talking his podcast about the data and analyzing the items that are taught. Then I've got Todd Whitaker talk about the importance of delivery of instruction, because you have great delivery instruction and you don't have to worry about the connection thing. But then that comes into what Principal Cafella says that has to do with the connections. So I had another podcast I was listening to, one of a orchestra teacher, and he was making a comment and he said this, look, he's overheard some of his team members say, we take the horse to water, but we can't make it drink it. And he made a great comment. He said this, well, how do you know that the water you're supplying in that classroom, the horse wants to drink? How do you know? Yeah, you might be doing a great job with the bell-to-bell instruction, but if the brain is fight or flight, then they're not going to want to listen. They want to go to the restroom. They want to get away from you because you provide toxicity to that student's learning. And they're going to refuse to learn because of what you bring to the table. So looking at it from the person that sits in my chair, Drew's chair, I'm looking at how am I doing, or what am I doing to make sure that the message is that we're all in it together. What are we doing to make sure that we appreciate each other and support each other's mission? And I think that's one of the things that I focus more on the previous campus I was at, that went from a D- to a B- with 2,500 kids. It was constantly making sure that they felt appreciated and supported and that we had their back at all levels, the custodian level, the cafeteria worker level, security, paras, team members, everybody, that they felt that that was their home. And I think that that's what someone that sits in my chair brings to the table, making sure that everyone feels comfortable. Because in the end, if everyone feels safe, they're going to want to work for you. Look at all the famous coaches. All the players will run through a wall because they appreciate them and they'll do anything. Even though they're ripping on them, you know what they're going to say? Yes, coach, because they believe in them caring for them. So that's one of the things that now, as Todd Whitaker says, even before the pandemic, things were okay. Now things are very intolerable. And so what are we doing to work together, making sure that we grow stronger together?
Cultivating a learning community that everybody feels part of is just paramount in any organization. It doesn't matter what you do. Mine, metaphorically, I'll go back to the coach's mentality here. It's all about the practice plan, and it's not about the big game at the end. If you have an airtight practice plan and you take care of all the little things leading up to the test dates that we have, the rest is gravy. Test days are fun. That should be an easy way to release what you know. And I try to really push that in our school. We look at tests as opportunities. Each and every day you're growing, no matter what it is, socially, emotionally, academically. It doesn't matter. Every day you have a piece of growth. And it all starts with that feeling part of the overall grouping of that learning community within your buildings. And it's from the bus drivers to the cafeteria workers to the custodians to the parents, how you sell it, and again, very important. Let's kick gears right now and let's go with the voice. How do we elicit that voice? Whether it's student, whether it's community, whether it's teacher, and we'll kick it back to Tracey.
Well, prior to us jumping on, one of the things I talked about is I also do some strategic planning with districts. And what I say to districts is that I have kind of a unique approach to doing it. I simply don't believe you if you say you intend to improve your district and you're not interested in eliciting the voice of the people who comprise your district. And when I talk about that, I mean, everyone from your paras, your teachers, your bus drivers, your custodians, like everyone who comprises the school community, and of course, especially kids. So I go into schools and districts and I meet with students from grades 2 to 12. And you see, here's the thing, that so often we get stuck because I think we think things have to be complicated when in fact it's deceptively simple. Listen, I go into schools and I say to kids, I believe that there's two essential qualities, two characteristics to great schools. One, there's a sense of connection. There are relationships. You feel known and noticed, valued, missed when you're absent. The second is that teachers teach in ways that you learn. So I have a really simple little diagram, or like it's a kind of a graphic organizer, if you will. And on one side, there's a heart. And on the other side, there's a brain. And I said, here's what we need to know. What could we do better or differently as a school or district to create a place where you feel more than just safe, where you feel welcome, where you feel valued, where you feel you can bring your best self and achieve your greatest potential? And what kind of learning experiences help you achieve at your highest level, help you grow, help you perform? And you would not believe what students say from grades 2 to 12. If you want to know how to improve your schools, just ask. They will tell you. And you need to be ready to hear what they have to say. And what a lot of kids are saying is they want more connection. They want a sense of connection to the adults. They want a sense of connection to other kids. They don't want to be in these rigid, chronologically based, grade band where they're, you have to sit here. You don't engage with them. We create these compartmentalized structures that are unlike anywhere else in the world. And they want to know each other. They want to have a sense of ownership. They want to contribute in some meaningful ways. And what I do when I meet with kids is I have them write things down. We surface what they have to say. I kind of analyze, aggregate, and present that to the district leaders and the Board of Ed. And if we want to know how to improve our schools, some of the best opportunities lie right there in the words and the sentiments of our students. If we would just slow down and listen. And here's something that I learned about. It's called contextual inquiry. It's questioning in place. So here's how it was first described to me. A hospital hired an organization to come in and provide them information about the patient experience. They said, we want to know what it's like to be a patient in our hospital. So I want you to think about how you would do that work. If you were hired to do that work, what would you do? What evidence, what artifacts, what data, what would you collect to present back to those hospital administrators? Well, they got together, and on the big day of the reveal, all the, the big brass is in the room, all the administrators are there. And the company shows hours and hours of mind-numbing video of the ceiling. Because the patient experience was one where it was completely devoid of anything that felt good, where there was, the patients laid in the bed and stared at the ceiling. And so what I like to say to people is, we need to seek to know what it's like to be students in our school. And I like to be a little bit provocative, a little bit disruptive here when I say to the people who are observing today that I believe you have no idea what it's like to be a student in your school. And until you take the time, until you randomly pick a student and you spend a whole day in their cons or their Uggs or their Crocs or whatever, you have no idea what it's like to be a student in your school. And when I've talked to administrators and teachers who've taken up that challenge, what some of them have said to me is that they had no idea. Some of them, most of them don't make it through a day. And I'm gonna send props to Heather Schwartz, who I issued that challenge at a conference I was doing once, and she took up this mantle in a way no one else has. She selected students from pre-K to 12 and spent a full day as that student. I will tell you that it opens your heart, your mind, your soul to the student experience in a way that we just don't know from our office. So I did that as a middle school principal, and I'll tell you, it was tough. And we need to go to the places like our special needs classrooms. We need to do the whole day. And I'll tell you, what many people have said to me is that they were unprepared for how boring it was in much of the day. That's just straight up truth. That's what people have said to me. That's what, quite honestly, my experience. So what would it be like to randomly pick a student in your school and have the courage to take the time and listen? You have to follow the rules. If they can't use your phone, you can't either. If they have to wait till 1 o'clock to eat, you don't go get a snack either. It's, what is it like to be a kid in our school? That is, I mean, talk about data. I mean, that's a powerful data source. It reveals connection. It reveals opportunity for voice.
I tell you what, I have done that before, and it's mind-boggling when you see what a child's day is like through their lens. It is unbelievable. And, you know, not only navigating the day, but wanting to be accepted and liked by their peers and the feelings associated with that. And as Principal Caffelli said, even think about what happens when they step off that bus, when they go home to an environment that we can't control. Think about that for a second. And then we get them back the following day and worry about the things that we can control. So very, very important. Let's kick that down over to Ashley. Ashley, from the voice perspective.
Yeah, so I have two things. One, I think that it is very important to reflect on all that and bring all that in, but I think there has to be follow-up and action. I think that's where I've seen the downfall in districts, is that they do go out, like my past superintendent, he followed a kid around too. Like they do that, or they do the community surveys, or they send out the teacher surveys, but then do they really take that information back? And what do they learn from that? And what do they change? Or do they just take it just to say, oh, we got our community input, and then they do what they want to do, or, you know, spin it. So I think it's really important to take the follow-up and take the feedback and do something with it. The other thing, going back to the students and the student voice, I think that's the biggest gap that I've seen in my work this year with teachers in the classroom, is that they're sitting there not engaged and not interacting, not communicating with each other, not communicating with the teacher. And so a lot of my work has been just helping the teachers learn structures to have active response and student voice in the classroom. And what, you know, small tweaks can we do in the classroom to have the kids turn and talk and get to know each other? There's been a big push with restorative circles, letting the students sit and just have share their voice about something that could be non-academic to academic, but just building those relationships and getting to know each other. So I think that, you know, it's very important to take into consideration how the students are feeling and engaged in the classroom, but then also, what are we going to do with that?
Awesome. Alphonse.
All right. Same thing. I agree with Ashley. Oftentimes, I mean, we come and we get some wonderful people such as Tracey. They'll come in and they'll do their thing and they work their magic. And people like me get so enthused, like, oh my goodness, they're bringing this in. They're bringing it to the light. And then all of a sudden, like Ashley says, it's like, well, what are they doing with it? And it seems more like it's a compliance thing that you just check the box. I did this for this year, just so I can go ahead and just say that I did do something. But then there's no follow up, and, you know, there's nothing that is done. And that to me is something that is disheartening, because I can see that there could be so much that we can learn from our students. As a matter of fact, I had a guest several podcasts ago, Bo Neal. He's founded an online charter school, but he said while he was teaching, he said, if I wanted to get better as a teacher, I would talk to my students and have them evaluate me. If you think about it, students have seen every single type of teacher there is, all the way from pre-K, K, all the way to 12th grade. Do you not think that they have expertise on what works and what doesn't? They have seen everything. So it would be great, like I agree with Tracey, to be able to get that feedback, but to actually do something with that and be very proactive and change that culture. By changing that culture and establishing just that rapport with the students where they can come in and they know that they're going to come into a safe place, safe environment, because for those 8 hours, it may be the safest place that they may be before they go home. And then I remember I would tell my kids, hey, just when you're in my class, be a kid. We're going to have fun. Don't worry about what's happening out there. But then as soon as you get home, do your homework real quick, take a nap, go to sleep, and whatever it is you need to do, but just come back here tomorrow and we're going to get ready to do what we can. And you're, again, just be a kid and have fun while you're here. So we need to take a lot of those things into consideration as well.
We got to look at an action step for the follow-up. What does that action step look like, and how do we drive that back into what we're doing? So great points right there. Drew.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, one of the things that I've got in my head right now is, man, I don't think I'm doing this right. When I think about like how busy I am during the day, like the following a student, I mean, that just, of course, that's what I should be doing. And I can always go back to, Mom, I'm too busy. Like that's what we always can say, oh man, I'm too busy. I'm covering classes, and that kind of stuff. But sometimes busyness is not the business that we should be in. So I got to remember that, like, what's the important stuff? I think for student voice, for me, it's about the micro things and the macro things that we do. Like so much of it, as we've all said, like is the micro level, like what happens in those small interactions at the classroom level, at the hallway level, cafeteria level, thinking about, whose names do we know? Do we call students by names? Do we know how to say their names? Which kids don't we call on in class? Which kids do we call on? Who do we praise in class? And specifically and genuinely praise kids. That's at the micro level, and that builds that sense of self-efficacy and agency in kids. Like, oh man, I belong in this school. That's cool. And that brings out that voice piece. And then I think about the macro stuff too, like those structural and systemic elements that we have in our school, which, who do those structures privilege? And who is not privileged to be in those structures? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it truly an inclusive environment, or are there certain structures that exclude kids? So for instance, we had a fall social after school. It was from 3 to 5 p.m. So that way there wasn't like a busing, issue right there with transportation. And we also made it 100% free. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know, guys, if it's 100% free, we're going to get run over by the number of kids that come into this fall social. And what I found was, you know what? Yes, that's how it should be, because no kid should be excluded from just being a part of a school function because there's a cost, So let's make it free. And 400 kids of our 942 kids came, and they had a blast. And so that's just one of the things that, like, the micro and the macro, those structural things that we have in our schools, that do they invite voice, or do they invite only certain voices?
Mm-hmm.
Josh.
Look, being a horrible high school student myself and being an EL student from another country learning English, you need to engage me. Hence a lot of the decisions that I made in high school. So that's always been one of the whole things is when we go to PD, adults, and we go to central office, they talk about engagement, but they're lecturing to us in the most boringest way ever. So I always tell our team members, don't bore me. Engage me, use technology, use stations, use corners, use snowball activity. And so whenever I've had the situation in my current chair is that I make sure that our team members, when they do book studies, when they do perform PD, and myself also, that it's always engaging, that they always do it, because they got to take those skills into the classroom. And, I've been blessed the last, I think, going on 2 weeks that we haven't been able to find a history teacher. I mean, I'm down still 4 teachers, and look at the month it is. So I've had revolving substitutes in U.S. history, and in Texas, that's a tested subject. So guess who's become the teacher? So I've been teaching for the last 2 weeks, and you know what? It's bell-to-bell instruction, engaging, corners, jigsaws, everything that has to do with it, because those kids the kids that I'm educating are the ones from El Salvador, Honduras, Vietnam, Ethiopia. They have no foundation about the Civil War. So what am I doing even more to make sure that I create dendrites for long-term learning? and it's only one way: visuals and engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Just like all of us, when we go to PD, when we go to central office, we want to be engaged so that we make long-term connections with our dendrites.
I'm glad, and that's another thing that's really important. That overall engagement piece. Walk by any classroom. If you see half the class just with the head down, they'll tell you they're engaged. They're auditorily listening, but they're not really fully functionally engaged in the whole thing. That master teacher has those plans and has those tricks in the toolbox that really light up the room. Watching kids converse, watching kids figure it out, watching them come together. I mean, that stuff, that is where learning really, really takes place. And, that's when a teacher becomes a facilitator rather than a teacher. Think about driving that train forward. Everybody wins with that. Hey, the last piece of this puzzle tonight is connections. Tracey, back to you. How important are connections, and how do we wrap this whole thing up?
Well, connections are everything. Until we reach kids, we can't teach them. That's it. They have to know you care. They have to know they matter. They have to know you see them and value them. I mean, it is I learned a long time ago, whether I'm doing PD with adults or working with kids, that the way to the head is through the heart. The way to the head is through the heart. I mean, do you love? And I will tell you, I speak unabashedly of the power and importance of love in schools. I'm about love. We have to love our kids, our colleagues, our craft, our community. We have to lead through love. And, connections is, and one of our colleagues here said, do you know how the brain responds when we just say someone's name? I mean, in schools that just endeavor to ensure that everyone knows each other's names, that's huge. When we just, look at each other. I mean, I worked with a vice principal once, and I had to stop her, and I said, where are you going? That is so much more important than who you're walking by. You need to look at them, see them. Everyone knows what you think about them because it's right here. Your eyes speak to their soul. And I want to offer a suggestion for people who want to look for ways to connect or surface voice, or like Ashley was talking about, or how to adjust our teaching so the kids are learning. It's a MLOSA. Now, I didn't say mimosa, Dean. I already know that you're thinking of mimosas. I don't know you well, but I'm feeling you right now. So a MLOSA, ready? Here it goes. What should I think about your experience in my class so far? To teach you better, right? To better teach you, what could I do? Here it comes. More of, less of, same as. So I want you to picture, here, I'll write it on my little piece of paper here. This is a great tool that you can use, like Ashley as a coach, right? Fonz as a tech person. When you work with others, what do we need to know from people? A MLOSA, here's how it goes. What could I do? More of, less of, same as. Ask. They will tell you. We've got to ask. A MLOSA is a simple tool that we can use in whatever role you're in. And that's how we can adjust our ways so that we can better connect to people. We can better achieve, or realize our purpose. We can better serve when we ask that question. What could I do? More of, less of, same as.
Better serve. I think that therein lies the whole thing of what we're all about. Drew, down to you. We're in the red. Drew, we're in the red zone here. Okay.
I know. I'm going quick. I had to unmute. I think the key thing is like you said, we're humans first. I've worked in some schools that have great positive PBIS programs, but nobody is positive to each other, the adults in the hallways, that kind of stuff. That's where it starts. And just, I think one of the keys with connection is just remember what you were like, especially as a young adolescent. Man, if you remember what you were like, that odd feeling, that icky feeling, that outcast feeling, go there. And that can help you sometimes connect with a kid who might feel disconnected.
Yes.
Boom. Principal Toba.
I would just say in this case is making sure you find everything. And as per the question that Principal Cafele asked, is making sure that we connect with them by finding about who they are. Lately, I've had to learn Amharic, Pashto, Vietnamese, There's different dialects of El Salvadoreño, Costa Riqueño, all the different versions of that Spanish. And you know what? Finding out about their culture, finding out about their ways. Our young ladies from Afghanistan, speaking to them in their Pashto, their language. It's all those things to connect with them. Because you know what? We're on the same mission of making sure that they're successful, making sure that they're proud Americans when they graduate with their high school diploma and whatever career path they want to take. But the only ways they're going to feel that is by making sure that our home is a safe place for them. And they're only going to feel safe if we do not connect it to their culture, their lifestyle. Like Principal Cafele always says, listen to their music, find out what they're saying, and then you really know what's going on in their head. That's why you can connect even further into the spiritual level. Because you know what? Music connects with every level of spirit. And once they know that, you know what? Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Ashley.
I like to think of the saying of, you've heard happy wife, happy life. I like to think happy teacher, happy class. And so a lot of my connections, all of my connections are really with the teachers and trying to build that capacity within them so that they can perform the best that they can in their class, which leads to student success and a happy environment for them to learn in. And so I think just building connections, the biggest thing that I've used is just that conversation, like listening to them, but then reflecting on the conversation and then acting. Like I said, there has to be follow-up. There has to be something. I've always led with, I give more than I take. So I always try to offer as much as myself to anyone who needs me that I can, leave them a little something so that they can go forward. So I do try to represent that servant leadership and try to make sure that they feel heard and seen and valued. And by my actions and by those conversations, I feel like it builds those connections that they can go back to the classroom and feel successful about themselves as an educator and what they're doing with their kids in the classroom.
Fonz.
Oh man, Ashley and I are like on the same wavelength because I deal with teachers. My thing is like this needs to be modeled and it needs to come from the top. If we want to get to our students, it needs to come from the top, all the way from the superintendent that actually buys into what you're doing into a program and not just checking off a box, but making sure that this takes place and it changes. And then that way, all of the CNI department is on this together and that's modeled between them. And then this can be brought up to the teachers because I agree with Ashley. When the teacher is very happy, the students are going to be very happy and it's a trickle down effect. And it's the only way to make those connections. So it is also very important, like Ashley says, is that the teachers are being heard, they're being listened to. And it's okay as a principal, say, hey, how about you evaluate me? What can I do? And be prepared for some of those hard truths. And even up at the top, say, hey, evaluate me. What are some things? Because sometimes we need to turn the mirror on ourselves to see what it is that we're doing and that we're giving off. And this is a team effort, but we need to make sure that we're in this together and that there is that, follow through. And I think that that's one of the things that I am frustrated with, that sometimes these great people come in, but then the follow through is not there. And then the program just dies without it even seeing the day of, or the light of day and making its way out into our classrooms.
Two things resonated with me. Number one, lead through love. I absolutely adore that because everyone knows if they are feeling loved. I'll tell you right now, that is so glaring. And the second thing is, listen up closely, meet people where they're at. Not just kids, teachers, community members, any constituent within your learning community. Meet them where they're at. You don't always have to agree. You can always find common ground, but people love to be heard. And they want to know that you give them the time to be heard. Okay. From there, anything can happen. Listen, we've got under a minute and a half to go. Tracy, what advice do you give to all of us here to make our schools just that school where everybody needs to be part of?
It's to lead through love and courage, to have the difficult conversations when they need to be had, to serve selflessly, to as Ashley says, to give it away, to truly show up. And we talked about that earlier. There's a difference between being present and really showing up. I think we have to show up with our head, our heart, be willing to lend a hand, and to remember every day that we do the most important work of all. We do incredibly important work. The stakes are high. We are needed. We've got to stay in it. And and just bring it every day. And I think a recurrent theme during our conversation today is that continuous cycle of improvement includes 3 steps. Assess, that means just gather the information. Analyze, make it make sense, and then for goodness sakes, act. Do something. Do something. If we want things to change, something has to be different. Let's be bold. Let's be courageous. Let's live up into our greatest dreams and make it happen.
Well, I got to tell you something on behalf of everybody here tonight. I got to say this to you, Tracy. You remind me of Susie Orman and her passion for financial literacy. Your educational literacy here. You are just taking it to a new level. And it's so important to have that energy behind what you do too. That mojo. You walk the talk. You do all the things and you lead by example. It's been a great show. It's been great meeting you. And everybody here on the panel tonight, Fonz, Ashley, Drew, Josh, as always, fantastic night. Outstanding. Listen, what I'm going to say to all of you, continue to keep being better. Continue to keep working hard. I ask everybody to stay on. Listen, everybody out there in Unlock the Middle Land, have a great week. Continue to make a difference because your kids deserve it.
Yes.
Everybody stay put.